And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to your favorite weekly series, Grace Under Pressure, where we are interviewing some of our favorite consorts from around the known world. Uh, kind of skipping around a little bit on there already. Anyways, this week is Duchess Miranda of Ontir. Next week is Countess Gwen of Northshield. Let's meet our hosts.
Hey, welcome this week and every week to my co-host and co-conspirator, Sir Joel DeGrace, who started in the SCA 16 years ago in the now Kingdom of Northshield and is now in Callantyre by way of the Outlands and Artemisia and a bunch of other places because he doesn't own a map. And so goes a little ways and just stops, just like the pioneers. Is that what happens, Joel?
Well, like on the map, it looks like it's like a really small distance, and then
Right.
I get moving and I get confused.
But it's all straight uphill.
Yeah, so I roll with the punches.
He is inspired and probably also tended by and corralled by his lady wife, the Honorable Lady Aniela. And a fun fact for Joel this week is once again, we are talking about this, Joel is afraid of horses. It's important to bring this up again because horses will be a part of the conversation today as we talk with Duchess Miranda.
Yeah, just looking at the equestrian background, I felt like it was really important to just reiterate that's a very important fact. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, the wonderful Duchess Dagmar of Ontir. Her first reign was as a princess of Snagwa in the west, and she had since gone on to have two reigns in Ontir with her husband and consort, Duke Thorin Nielsen. This week's fun fact about her is that her favorite coin is the dime.
I love dimes. I love dimes. I will hoard dimes. I just think they're so wonderful. I like the way they feel. I like stacking them.
It's interesting. I have like our giant change jar just right off camera there. So
I think the reason I like them is because in my heart of hearts, I've always wanted to use the metric system. And they are like metric money. So I'm sure somebody out there can analyze that for us and determine if that's true. Also, like German coins have a very similar, like they have little tiny coins like that too. And I like that. So it's not interesting. It's just a fact. Maybe it's fun to me.
I think it's interesting. I don't know.
Like
I'm sure people out there think it's interesting.
You can give me your dimes.
If you think it's interesting, leave a comment.
It's not interesting. Anyway,
send dimes to Duchess Dagmar.
Yeah, you can send all of your dimes.
There'll be an address at the end.
Right. And we would like to extend a special thank you this week and every week to Ashaxi and Rifkin for hosting Grace Under Pressure on the Sisters Interview Network. What you are doing, collecting oral history of all of the culture of the SCA is so incredibly important. And we're super grateful to you for doing this and doing all the work to make this possible. So now, Joel, please introduce our illustrious guest.
Absolutely, would be honored to. Everybody watching from home, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate you making the time to join us. This week, we are joined by Duchess Miranda, who was the 52nd and 58th Queen of Ontir, and is the founding Baroness of the Barony of Stromgard. She's a Pelican and also a former equestrian champion of Ontir and is an avid herald. This is where the scared of horses thing came from.
You're wise to be scared of horses, really, because the things that we ask them to do, if I was a horse, there's no way. No way.
Yeah, that's our hubris as humans, are all the animals that we think we control. They've got to be into it. There's got to be something in it for the horses, or else there's no way they'd agree to it. So Miranda, of course, you and I know each other fairly well because we share our separate corners of the kingdom, and we are both royal peers and have reigned kind of in each other's orbits. But our listeners may not know you. So could you tell us a little bit about your SCA origins, what brought you to the SCA, you know, what's your shtick?
Of course, it all started back in college, those wild experimental college days. Sir Duke Sir Tiernan, my husband and consort, before we were married, and we had just started dating. His best friend called one day and said, "Hey, there's guys fighting each other with sticks and swords and shields and helmets and armor." And so Tiernan raced off to check that out. And shortly, both of them were storing armor in my station wagon and parking it at their place. I didn't have to pay for parking then, so that's good. They were parking at their fraternity, and then I would drive them to fighter practice, and we started going to Weldsmere events in Spokane and Wastekeep events in the Tri-Cities. And it was pretty lonely for a while because you just don't know anyone. You're in a little pup tent, a little dome tent. Tiernan swears we never had a dome tent. We did. You couldn't stand up to change your clothes, get in your garb and all that. So hot. So anyway, and I said, if we're going to keep doing this, I want to make sure that that we're running around with people that I would not be embarrassed to introduce to my parents. And so we started hanging out with Dagar. Actually, we just started running around with all the people from Weldsmere and Wastekeep. And Dagar became Tiernan's knight. And he was Squire Brothers with, well, at the time it was Rundrig Hammerfist, but now you might know him as Steercar Jarlskald. And so these were the people that really started forming our family. And we had, we were on Gunnar and Gabrielle's retinue. That was our first bit of service outside of our branch. And it just rolled from there. And now, it's amazing that some of the closest people in my life are these SCA people that we started running around with back then. And they are part of our family. I see them more often than I see a lot of our family members.
Yeah. And were you involved in equestrian activities before the SCA?
Yeah, I grew up in 4-H and holding offices in 4-H and doing public speaking demos. Like, this is distemper in horses. And I'd have this cool poster and I'd pull some pus out of, like, a little stream of pus out of this little pocket in the poster. Yeah, it was cool.
Have you ever seen, did you ever see my 4-H costume?
No.
That I wore to a party, and I did a trifold display on bovine mastitis as part of my costume.
Yeah.
See, I grew up in a town with a lot of 4-H people, but I actually, no, you know what? It was FFA. I was an FFA girl, not a 4-H
I was
girl.
an FFA as well.
Of course you were.
Served as a state officer and traveled around and handed out awards. So it's kind of in my blood. But yeah, I grew up with horses. I got my first pony when I was 9 years old. And then my dad decided that it's no fun to ride alone. So he got a horse too. And we just, every day after he got home from work, we'd go for trail rides.
Cool. Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of those acronyms made sense to people watching that know these things. But I finally remembered, Miranda, we have met. And I remembered Wire when we were talking. So at Sport of Kings, you remember a guy who got stabbed in the face by Tiernan, laughed super, super hard, and then came over to you and thanked you for the fight. Do you happen to remember that? Or Yeah, that was me. So I do. So we have met. It was after I got stabbed in the face and busted out laughing super hard because I forgot he had a thrusting step. There. Yeah. Now I remember where we met. So
it's always nice when you do have an enjoyable encounter in your competition.
Oh, I'm always laughing when I'm on the field. So that's a hallmark. So you have a lot of great experience out there now. And with both brands, so my first question, how long have you been playing before your first reign?
Now I have to do some math. Good thing I'm good at it. We started in 88 and our first reign was in 2007, so 19 years. But we had been the Baron and Baroness, the founding Baron and Baroness of our branch of Stromgard And so we had that experience of 3 years of doing court. And I know it was really instrumental in having a successful reign at the kingdom level. One of the things that I just naturally did is when I was queen, I would talk about the award recipients, my handy dandy wooden book. So I'd have like talking points about the award recipients. And even though I didn't know who they were personally sometimes, I felt it was important that people knew why that person was getting recognized. And maybe it would inspire in the populace somebody to do, oh, I didn't realize that that was something that needed to be done, or that that was an activity. And so I always had my little book with me. It's really funny at that September Crown we were talking about earlier. In 2010, I look at my book and I do the notes, and person would be called up, and I'd talk about this person. I'd walk out into the audience, I grab the person, bring them up, talk about this person. And it was Viscount Aldens from Thierry sitting at the other end. And he's like, how's she doing that? Did she memorize all these? Because it was, a September Crown, so it was a big court. But I'm like, yeah, I memorized all. I know everyone in the kingdom.
That's right. I did something that was more labor intensive for the people around me, where I would have the person who handed me the scroll would say a few words that I could say. For me, it was things I could say privately, where they're like, this is being given for blah, 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 and like remind me from our notes. Because it's really hard otherwise to feel like you have a personal connection with somebody. And there are people that I'm sure remember you because you gave them an award and you're not really sure who they are. And that's very humbling when someone's like, oh my God, you were such a big deal, and you gave me my AOA and it was such an important moment. And you're like, mm-hmm. Yep.
If they say their name, I tend to remember it because, and sometimes I'm really good at remembering the event and what the hall looked like or what was going on. But I was my own court coordinator.
Right. Okay.
As Baron and Baroness twice.
Yeah.
And I did have Mistress Guerra who would help me with award sifting, but I just didn't want to burden anybody else with the job. And then I knew, what I was giving awards out for. And Tiernan would be like, well, can I say something? I'm like, did you take notes? I got notes. And so I started to be like, do you want to say something? This person's getting it for having a period encampment. You like period encampment. So, but as Baroness, I knew the people I was giving awards to. So it was really natural for me to talk about them. So I just extended that to the kingdom level.
And so, since not everyone who listens to these may have baronies in their home branches, or their baronies may not be structured quite the same, one of the questions that we have for you is, how did your time as Baroness lend something to your reigns as queen? And it sounds like that was an important step. Are there any other things that you think benefited you as you moved forward in your role as queen?
Benefited from being a baroness. Knowing that your words have impact on people. Mm. And as Baroness, I was there for 3 years as kind of a mother hen, especially the first tenure, because a lot of people didn't go to things outside of the branch at all, even to Three Mountains, which is like 12 minutes away. And so it was important to us. It's kind of like bringing up baby, the baronial baby, to get people to travel around and see what was being done in other branches. And I appreciate the opportunity to inspire people to do those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being queen, it's a full-time job. if you, in my opinion, if you do it well, it's a full-time job. And it's not about the, it's not about people waiting on you.
Yeah.
It's about doing service to the populace. So providing that medieval experience and that recognition, it was so moving. There were times when I cried giving an award of arms to someone, and I never met this person before, but I hold their hands and I look in their eyes and I'm talking to them, and you could see physically, emotionally, they needed that at that point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to have that kind of ability to recognize people, and that might have been the first time that they'd ever been recognized for anything in their life. And it just, after you get awards and you've been in for a while, sometimes you forget that people just need to be recognized and thanked, acknowledged, and I'm happy to have been able to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Joel, you have a second part to this question typically.
Yeah, sorry, I was choking a little bit there just as I was about to start talking. So
it's very emotional, Joel. So
yeah, totally.
Are you drinking your milk?
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. Healthy bones, yo. So looking back on your early experiences, or just your experiences in general while sitting on the throne, is there a humorous story where you might have screwed something up, or like a good learning experience from a mistake that you may have made that you'd be willing to share with?
I'll tell you one that's clean. Horrible. It's not humorous. It's horrible. We had gone to Weldsmere in October, and I had a healthy list of award recipients. So I went over with them with the Baron and Baroness and said, are these people here? Figured it out before court. Yep, I'm just going to cut the list in half, and we'll do the next half. We were coming back in like 3 weeks to do another event, mostly because my mom lives in Spokane in Wilkes-Barre, and so it was a great chance to do double duty. But so we did the one event, and then we came back 3 or 4 weeks later, and in court, as I do, I start walking out into the audience, the populace, and I'm talking about this person, and I'm just gushing on and on about this person. And somebody stands up and says, person's name is dead, and rushes out of the room. And I'm standing out in the middle of all these people who loved and adored this person. And I had not checked the list when I came back the second time. And so that was a valuable lesson. But thank goodness I had my wits about me. Talk about grace under pressure. I was able to say, well then, it's obvious that you all appreciated the work that she did. It was for a Gute song, so a service award. Let's take this moment and share a few words about her and her work. And thankfully, a few people popped up here and there and said some things. And I'm like, okay. So, just to honor her and the work she's done, let's move forth and have a wonderful event. And I turned around and I looked at my herald, who was steer car, and I'm like, call the next person.
Yeah. And this is before we had the riderless horse, because now we have a conduit of communication. People know to contact the consorts of Von Tier to let us know when someone has passed. And we usually find out within days of somebody having passed. And it's not that we need it for this circumstance, which is very unusual, but just it's way less likely to happen because we have so much better communication around this now. But that it isn't a humorous anecdote, but you just have to go forward. You can't fall apart.
So it's an important note to make that anyone can contact one of the past royalty of Antir and the principalities of Antir and let us know, or talk to your seneschal or somebody else, a peer, and make sure that we get that information sent to us. So
Yeah.
we also have a ceremony at September Crown where the names are announced and the Queen puts a tassel on the riderless horse representing the
Every
people who
person.
have passed
Yeah.
in the last year or so.
Yeah. It's
I
really,
usually am the groom, the wrangler for that. I lead the horse in a lot of times.
Yeah. I think
and
you
it-
and Anhara do it pretty much on a almost rotating
Yeah.
basis, depending on where we are. Yeah.
And the year that Master Mishka passed away, my horse, I had actually gotten the horse from Mishka
Oh,
to
wow.
begin with, my super partner, Cookie. And a very fierce name she had, Cookie. And so I was able to use Cookie for the riderless horse that year. So it was really a moving experience for me and an honor to be able to use her in his riderless horse part.
So this is an interesting piece of interkingdom anthropology, Miranda, that sometimes we touch on is, not every kingdom has the same sort of rituals and rites and activities for former royal consorts. And, it's something in Ontir, we've talked a little bit about how we do kind of this Valkyrie service, if you will, for our people who have passed. And then we also have the Belated Rose, which is an award that we award. But otherwise, our activities are somewhat limited as a group. We don't typically hold tournaments. We do sometimes, but not very many. And it's just something that I've noted in talking with with people from other kingdoms, where they may have a more active role, for example, in advising new royalty, for example.
I always have wanted to do a princess's boot camp or a new baroness's boot camp.
Yeah.
And or consorts boot camp. And I've got pretty much one piece of advice, and that is, well, two. You have to project your voice, because nobody wants to watch a television program with the sound turned off, right? No reason to go to court if you can't figure out what's going on. And that led me to being a herald, but that's later on. My piece of advice is the difference between your first reign and your second reign is you figure out how to have pictures taken without the double chin. Okay, so this is the most important thing, because it goes down in history, right? All these pictures. When you first step up, you're like holding the person's hands and you're looking down at them. This does not look nice. However, if you bend at the waist and you stand one step back from the kneeling pillow, it hurts after a while, but that person is going to have a lovely photo then, without the double chin of the queen. So
does Tiernan follow that advice too?
No. Tiernan does not follow my advice often enough.
Why don't we take a look at your photos now, Miranda?
Okay.
I think you're going to drive on those.
Okay, I can do that.
So if you want to share your screen.
I will do that.
And there you are.
Am I? I can't.
We can see. Yep.
So, and I love this picture, by the way. This is my all-time favorite picture of just being happy, and it was just taken. It's actually a candid shot. Somebody said Miranda, and I turned my head, and they took this picture, and I'm like, oh, this is at Baron's Ball. Baron's Ball is like homecoming for Tiernan and myself.
It looked like Eastern Washington. Is that the Wheelsmere site?
That's down in Wastekeep along the Columbia River, and Sacagawea Park. And all those people are so fun and just enjoyable, and you have such a great weekend. And it is like going home for homecoming weekend, because that's where we grew up. And those are the people that we ran around with. And it's so neat that so many of them are still active in the SDA and definitely had an impact on our trajectory, our story. All right, so this was probably 1990, right after Tiernan and I got married. I am holding a stuffed sheep there, and there was some kind of a competition where we were supposed to, the ladies were supposed to get a battle point or a war point by tracking down this guy with this sheep strapped to him. And Countess, it went out of my head. One of the gals that was also in our branch who went on to become a queen as well, she and I tackled this poor guy and a whole bunch of women. It was like a big pile, like football player pile, and we tore this off of the poor guy. This is also the event that I think Sven got his ribs broken by the Prince of Artemisia. It was a good time. All right, so here's
someone in the comments is saying it was Louisa.
Oh, that's right, Louisa.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All I could think of her was her mundane name. So here is Duchess, Signe, and myself, and this would have been in 2000. Signe is one of my closest friends. She's in the BFF, BTDB, something or another. It's Best Friend Forever, Bury the Bodies.
Yeah.
Bury the Bodies. Yeah. And
we all need friends like that.
Yeah.
Somebody did me wrong once, and she's like, I would totally vandalize their stuff for you. And I'm like, no. Oh, that's the sweetest thing anyone said to me ever.
She's one of those people that I know reliably, anything I say to her will make her laugh. And that is like the biggest ego boost ever. So she is herself an extremely funny person. So if she thinks you're funny, it's an enormous compliment.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and she was just, bright-eyed little fawn when at 19 when she started doing the SCA, and it was great to help them grow up. We've known Sven since before he was knighted, and the first time that they had us to their encampment and fed us dinner, we were like, our babies are growing up. And it was like Nellie's chili in little plastic bowls. But yeah, she's fantastic. And here's one of my the biggest inspirations I had for being queen. Signe has this superpower of talking to people and making sure that they feel like they are completely being heard, like they are the only person, and she never rushes a conversation. And it's just awe-inspiring to see how people warm to that. So this was the day that I stepped up as the founding Baroness of Stromgard. And it looks like we're having a great time.
What are you holding?
That is a paper mache lion.
That's what I was going to guess.
Side of the dais. So it was pretty cool. It was down in Audiantum, and they do fantastic decorations. But it looks like we're having a good time, but this was a day with a lot of tears and stress. Our coronets did not get delivered because when it was Vrin who was doing them, and when he went to like size them or something, they just kind of went. So that was one thing. People had been banished and then unbanished at this event for administrative reasons. People from our branch. It was horrible, but there's my Signe helping me through it. And she was just stepping down as queen that day. Or up, one or the other. Here we are later on in the afternoon. Now, the cloaks are from Stromgard, I think, pretty sure. But the coronets are actually from the barony next door across the river from Three Mountains. So we're the only non-Three Mountain baron and baroness that have been invested with these coronets. And it's really neat because at the time, Guillaume and Elizabeth, our good friends that we had met way back when we started, had also moved to Portland, and they were the Baron and Baroness there. So there's a lot of history. Some of these are blurry, but I love them anyway. A big part of our life, obviously, is our little twin boys who are now going to turn 16 next month.
No, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Nope.
And they're all bushy and hairy right now. They're like, and they won't let me cut their hair. And Luke keeps saying it's because I poked him in the eye, tried to poke his eye out 2 times ago when I cut his hair. If he'd just sit still.
I've always wondered if they're Welsh, if you have Welsh blood in your families because of that. Like
because I poke people in the eye?
No, because of the big hair.
Oh. German, Irish, Scottish, Dutch, and French. For me, I don't know what the Tiernan is.
Yeah.
Something else.
He's a prince in Ireland.
Yes, he owns his own island. But it's really hard to have kids in the SCA. It is really hard. If somebody like Tiernan had activities going on as a champion, and he might have been your champion when the boys were born. I think he was. Yeah, so he was off at Ontier West War all day long fighting, and then all evening in court, and here I am back at the encampment by myself, and I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And you can't take 2 babies to the bathroom with you. And I remember just sobbing, crying because I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten yet. Nobody was around to help. But it's really hard to have kids. And one of the things that is really important to me is when someone's made a peer for all the work that they've done or for mastering their skill, there's a whole bunch of support people behind that person. And I think we need to do a better job of acknowledging that they can do their thing without somebody else staying home to take care of the kids, or without somebody else to make sure that the water bottles are filled, or somebody gets to practice. Right. Taking care of the person when they've gotten hurt at their activity. But one of the things I did as queen, the first go round, was create consort tokens. And then when people came up for September Crown and came up in the processional, I was able to give the consort a token, and it had our devices on each side. So I see those every once in a while on people's necklaces. I'm like, oh, you were at that event.
That's cool.
So, but yeah. So the upper left-hand one that's Benjamin Atticus. He is now a man-at-arms for Sir Rainer, and he's going to do the fighting thing. So his SCA name is Uhtred. Takes me a while to remember those things. He's Benji Boo Boo. Uhtred there is holding the Prince and Princess's Book of State. That was when we were invested as the Prince and Princess. And we're like, here, kid, hold on to this. And he's like very serious about it all. They did a fantastic job of serving on tier in both reigns. They were 2.5 the first time and 5.5 the second time. And they would hand out necklaces. They would hand out scrolls. They would escort people. And even now, well, maybe not now because they're teenagers, but a couple of years ago, Ben and Luke would both do when we were the king or Baron and Baroness still. So I guess that's a long time ago, not a couple of years ago, like 7 years ago. They would at one of our big events at the grand thing, they would do like poetry to introduce people, and they're just adorable back then. But it is hard. It is hard to be a parent in the SCA, and it got a lot easier when we started camping with other parents.
Yeah.
And Nita and Caius from Dragon's Lair have become some very good friends of ours. And when we go to Ontier West War, each one of us gets to do our activity. I can take the horse with me. I could take the horse with me and take the boys, but I couldn't take the horse, the boys, and Tiernan with me.
But
When I-
Nita can take her horse with her too.
Yes, yes, she could.
Her hobby horse. She doesn't
Yeah.
actually have a horse. She has a hobby horse that she rides around inside of, named Anzia.
But, and this is one of my favorite photos of Luke and Ben rolling around at Ontier West War while we're watching court. Well, I'm watching court. The babies, here they are at May Crown 2005, and we had Magda Deerhurst up in the next branch north of us, had made them these cute little caps to wear, and those are hand-me-down tunics. I'm sure that they probably came from Duke Eric when he was a baby, because we just keep recycling those clothes.
Yep. There's a bag of baby clothes that travels around on tier, and people will be like, oh, I made that, when they see it on somebody's kid, and you try your best to get the stains out before you hand it on to the next person. So
this blood stain is when they fell and they cut, on the coffee table, and they cut, and this is the first time we stepped up. Ben, it was hot. It was very, very, very hot, and he's obviously not having any of it. But my parents were able, this was at Farragut State Park in Idaho. My parents were able to come out from Spokane and pick the boys up and take them home after the ceremony. But they were our little cup bearers.
see, people have this idea of Ontier being super rainy. And yes, we do have many days of rain a year, but the reality is we have every climate in Ontier. We have glaciers, we have rainforest, we have desert, we have high desert. We have, as yes, I see one of our listeners saying surface of the sun hot. we have mud, we have everything, and sometimes it's all on the same weekend.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed it is. This in the upper left here, this was September Crown, and it was 2010, and Duchess Dagmar and Duke Thorne were in the finals, and you can see that she's seated there with young Niall, their little one, who is now how old?
He is 12 now.
12.
Yep. So I was a countess in this photo.
Yeah.
And my dear friend, Tasia, is the person sitting across from me, who's also in the finals.
Excellent. And this is all of us watching the finals. I love to look at the people behind the ones that are getting their picture taken and see who's there. We've got Gernon back here, Duke Cedric. This is Steercar's oldest daughter, Fyron, Syriac the Hunter from Stromgard, Gara, Amis from Stromgard. She was one of our baronesses. This is Atia, Mistress Atia, holding her mouth shut. That's good. She's one of my dear friends.
Is she like me and doesn't realize until it's too late that she's standing next to somebody's video camera and has been holding forth?
We all learned
and is
that
now
one.
On the soundtrack of somebody's fighting videos.
Yeah, we all learned that one. And my star Reagan Leaf, she was who we called New Girl for probably 8 years. And I was always like, you can't say that. You can't say that. Shh, inside voice. And she got it. She got it. She turned into a very lovely consort. This is the same event, FIOC, and we created 8 Kingdom Awards in our time. And one of them is the Worthy Wordsmith, and they get a wooden book to write down their poetry and whatnot in. But you can get it for being someone who writes ceremonies in period style, researches and does poetry or scroll text. And FIOC has always been one of those people who impresses with his voice. He's got this great voice and singing voice, and he often, when those of the Varangian Guard were in the finals, would get to say like the lineage of Ontier, and that was always so powerful and impressive. Yeah. This is September Crown 2007, our first reign, and that's our first court. We got to ride into court on these beautiful white horses. I later, the one that Tiernan's on, I later went on to win an Grand Prix. The Black Lion Grand Prix is our premier equestrian event in the Kingdom of Ontario. And I also won my first Kingdom Championship on this horse. And he did not belong to me. My horse was sick, and Dame Maka, the determined, knew that I wanted to compete, and she offered her horse.
Nice.
So people can say what they want about equestrians being snobby or mean or whatever, but our people in Ontario are fantastic. In fact, I served 3 years in a row as the equestrian champion, and the third year I rode 7 different horses, and only 2 of them belonged to me. So we had 7 events, 7 different horses, and so 5 other people were willing to trust me to ride their horse. So, and it was just a challenge I wanted to do for myself.
It's come a long way. I do have to be honest, in our first reign, we were, the equestrians in general were, I think SCA wide, were under a lot of scrutiny, and they were not getting along in Ontario at all. And I actually had a folder labeled with some very special expletives just for my equestrian stuff, because everything was still in, like, a lot of it was on paper at the time. And it was very frustrating, but my tendency is, as soon as I am frustrated or upset with something, I dive into it harder. And I'm like, okay, this has to work. We have to make this work. And that's one of the big reasons that the riderless horse was launched the way it was a way to bridge the relationship between the royalty and the equestrians, to make sure that there was always a role for the equestrians that was really affirming. Because it wasn't for a while. It was very much on the margins of what we did as a society. So, but this was before we had strongly established a lot of customs around the equestrian. So I think, though, that there are a few people that, like yourself, and there's some other folks that bridge that gap really well and have done a lot to help the way people perceive equestrian activities. And the way that you work with the Crown and with events. So
yeah, his lordship Togrel stepped up as the equestrian kingdom marshal at that time, and he did a fantastic job of managing the personalities in a way that they could really come together. And I think those kinds of situations happen in any group that you belong to, and it ebbs and flows. And we've had a really great time the last, I don't even know how many years ago that was, over 15 years, I'd say. Yep. I'm not sure. But it's important to realize that each group does go through their growing pains, and that there is a bright side to come out to on the other end.
That's right. And we're dealing with horse people, so remember those people who have
away from that.
Those people who have the hubris to think horses do their bidding. Remember, so
Well, my horse Cookie was definitely my partner. I brought her out of retirement. My the second championship I won, she was sick, but she had recouped enough that I could bring her out, and she far outperformed me that day. I made mistakes and she compensated. Yeah. She was just that amazing, and an amazing partner for me to have. So this was our second step up, and this is Surface of the Sun, hot Vulcanfeld, the barony in the middle of our state of Washington, and it was hot. You see Brian Ledbury here, Diesel, Arnsbjorn, and I got to do some poetry and speak during my own ceremony, so that was fantastic.
And tell me, what's the fabric that you're wearing in that other photo on the Surface of the Sun?
Oh, this right here?
No, the other photo. Are those wool cloaks?
Those are wool cloaks.
Yeah, heavy coat weight wool cloaks that you're sporting, because that's what we do in Ontario.
Wool cloaks. We took them off as soon as we were.
They're beautiful, and I believe they were made by a Shaxi.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely one of the most gorgeous pieces of regalia that this kingdom has ever had, but they are made out of heavy wool. And
I
Yeah.
don't know why we didn't use the summer ones, the summer weight ones that had been used in ceremonies forever. I don't know why, but we weren't real smart back then. All right, so I want to talk
love
about
this
the
photo.
power,
I love this.
the power of the Orb of Royal Dominion. The Orb of Royal Dominion is part of the King and Queen's regalia. You know, the king has his scepter and the queen has the rod, but there's this brass ball that's the Orb of Royal Dominion, and it represents
Bed knob.
nourishing.
It's a bed knob.
It's a brass bed knob, fine, but it represents nourishing and building up the populace, caring for them. And I love this. And it never got trotted out except at coronations. And I just fell in love with the orb and took it around. And this is what we did our fealty on. So throughout both reigns, we did fealty on the orb because it really represents taking care of the populace.
You might remember that I thought I had lost it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
During one of our reigns, I don't remember, I think it was the second one, maybe it was the first one. I thought I had lost the orb, and we finally found it in a bag of stuff that had come home from our coronation. So this was the end of our reign. I'm like, I can't find the orb. Where is that stupid orb? And we finally found it. Yeah.
I probably have the Facebook Messenger post that you were like, did you take the orb?
Where is the orb? So we found it in a bag of stuff, and I was like, oh my God. Because we
I
were
didn't
like,
take the orb. I love the orb.
Where are we going to get a spare brass bed knob? It's not like they're just lying around everywhere. You can thank Disney for that. Anyway.
So this other picture speaks to the power of the orb. And this is again in Waste
That
Keep.
Daedin?
That is Daedin. Like I said, it's like homecoming. Daedin was Tiernan and his best friend Moreau. They decided she was their patroness. She was the patron of Lion's March, which was Rossfeld back then. And so she was seriously, can't they see I'm busy? So she was my first glimpse really at someone who was a lady of the rose. So this is Daedin, and she came up to swear fealty to us, and it's a beautiful day. It's warm October. All of our buddies are there, and she comes up, and she's one of the first people to come up and to swear fealty. And I leaned over and I said, "Do you want to be a Lion of Antir?" And Lion Antir is our biggest award that you could recognize someone with, as far as this is the epitome of what makes up the warp and weft of the weave of tapestry of Antir. And she had such an impact on so many people and was such a level-headed person. And she'd become a good friend. In fact, I had gone to her house, intentionally stopped by her house on the way home from some event with the boys, saying that the little boys needed to have a potty break, stopped by her house and had talked to her about whether she would accept it, because she didn't think that she was worthy of being held up as an icon, as somebody to follow. And it was just a magical day, and she loved the orb just as much as me, and the power of the orb set in, and she accepted that from us, and it was magical. So she's one of my heroes. And you see Dame Bridget in the background going, "Oh my gosh," because she knew how exciting this was. But anywho, one on the right there, that's probably our first processional in a crown tournament. And in front of us is Mistress Morgana, who was our seneschal at the time.
And who's watching.
And who's watching now. Hi, Morgana. We were made pelicans at the same event by Gunnar and Gabrielle, who we got to all run around with. So And then on the left is Duke Kiartan, and this is when Tiernan squired him. And I included this because Kiartan and I did not have a good relationship for a long time. And I really reminded him, I believe, a lot of his mom and some other people. And so we didn't have a good relationship. And I'm so thankful now to be able to call him a good close friend that I would go to for advice or to back me up on something. And he and Duchess Shea are the ones that made me a lion on tier and totally surprised me. I was their herald at the time, and it was, I believe it was a September crown. And Duchess Ludwiga's out front, and she's talking, and she's telling the story about this wonderful, fabulous person. And I leaned over to Kiartan and I said, I don't have text for this. I'm not prepared to do a ceremony for this. And he's like, he winks at me and he says, just figure it out. And I'm having a little panic attack. And then they called me forth and gave me the lion. So it just goes to prove that even if you don't like someone or you don't get along with them, they just rub you the wrong way, they push your buttons, set you off, they trigger you somehow. If you work through it long enough, you can become very close.
One of my superpowers is lying to people to get them into court to receive their awards. It's an important superpower to have. So nobody should ever trust anything I say ever. It's a pretty good chance you're getting an award. So
I was sitting with, I believe she was your apprentice, and now I can't remember her. You know, the problem with Facebook is I can't remember people's SCA names now.
Well, there's the little blonde one, the little red-haired one, the little.
Well, this is Baroness Blothenor.
Yeah,
and I was sitting, Marika, right. All right, so I'm sitting with her out front of some hotel we were having an event at, and you kept going by saying, you guys should go to court. You should go to court. And it's because she was being offered her laurel.
Yeah.
We're like, we're catching up. We're fine. We're fine.
Yeah. I hate court. So if I'm telling you to go to court, you should go to court. Come on, guys.
I love court. One of my favorite pictures, this is our step down, our second reign. Got the lion on tier behind. And Duchess Ludwiga is the one who made these fantastic garments for me. She was also our nanny at the time. And we met her probably in 1991 or two, when we went to Estrella, and she scared the bejesus out of me. Yeah. She scared me to death. I was peeling potatoes with her in the kitchen, and she's like, telling me what to do. And I'm just like this 21-year-old little don't know what's going on. And she scared me. And then 16 years later or so, she became our nanny for our boys. We've got Tiernan here, and this photo cracks me up. I'm standing there, champion of the horse for on tier, and I'm standing outside the pavilion where I had to stand for 3 years because that lance is so long that I would have sliced the pavilion roof. So I stood there, and he came up to give me a little kiss, but he's not like, is somebody sneaking up on me or something? Because look at his eyes. His eyes are all like, he's scanning. He's monitoring. So, I don't know. Maybe he was just, looking at the queen or something. And here we are at our first Penzic that we went to. So, Avaloq and Malika were king and queen. And one thing that Duchess Groa did that I was just so impressed with was that she always referred to them as, my liege, your majesty, even in camp. And they were close friends. And I'm like, even in camp, just in front of little old me, she still maintained that. And I think that's so important to remember when your friends do step up to a position, that you're respectful and that you're setting the tone for other people.
I think Ludwiga, she was our herald in our first reign, which was like gobsmacking for me that someone of her status would want to serve the crown like that. But it was an amazing lesson in humility and service to the crown to have somebody like that, and to the way that she shows deference to the crown, that makes it clear that she's doing it because she thinks it's important, and that she's not trying to flatter, and that she's setting an example for the people around her of how you should behave around the crown. And that was very, very cool, because, you know, I hadn't reigned an Antir, my husband had, but I hadn't. And it was nice, you know, when you have people like that who can set that example, it really sets the tone for the reign. So
I think it's part of our job as royal peers to
yeah,
set that tone, and then also to continue to serve.
that's right.
And Viga and I have had very similar paths in the SCA. She was Baroness 2 times, 2.5. She was Baroness of Stromgard. We borrowed her to serve with Baron Ivan. And we borrowed her for Three Mountains, and now she's definitely ours. And she served for 6 years, but she's one of the people that I follow as far as service. We can't just sit back and let other people do all the work.
I think we covered the who's one of your favorite mentors questions, Joel.
Yeah, I know. I feel left out tonight, so I'm just
Sorry,
gonna
Joel.
I'm just gonna keep sitting back and drinking tonight. It's
Let's
good.
talk
This
about
has got this.
horses, Joel.
I can pick on you and make fun of you. Would that make you feel better?
Yeah, just throw an occasional jab at me so I feel.
All right.
Okay,
So
we can do
Joel, you can talk about this picture, Joel. Tell us the story behind this picture.
You know, you've been introduced to everybody in it now.
Yeah, so those hats are really heavy.
Yes, you learned that from Inga.
You have to put a
look
quarter.
Like Ugo. I'm guessing they're Ugos.
You have to put a quarter in the jar for calling them hats.
Shit. All right. It looks painful. I recognize the fighters for sure. So that looks hurty.
Yep.
You know what? You go ahead. I don't want to upstage
okay.
you. Yeah,
all right. Well, Joel's right. Those are heavy crowns of both sets, but Inga had told us in her interview that theirs are actually very lightweight, and I believe Duchess Dagmar said they're made of cheese so that you can snack throughout the day.
It's possible I said that. That seems very out of character for me.
No, you said that.
Oh, okay.
Huh.
So
We'll confirm.
this is Inga is on the left, Duchess Inga, hailing from Avocalve. She served her first reign as on tier queen, and Arnsbjorn next to her, her dapper husband there. He is actually Tiernan's second squire, and
sometimes called Asbjorn or Amber. What's the other one?
Amber Jordan.
Amber Jordan. These are things that he's been called by heralds who misunderstood his name on the card. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and proud mama and papa there, and Duke Kiartan, Duchess Shea, the second time they stepped up. This was in Stromgard, where, except for Inga, the rest of, well, the middle 4 people are from Stromgard. And it was really special because they were both kings at the same time. And then another brother type, cousin type person from the ship crew was also serving as king in Lockhawk at that time. So pretty neat.
So there's a few people like Shea where I've been like, you know, I want to interview all these people, but there's a lot of Ontirans, and you know, we want to interview people from lots of places. So I was thinking we should do a Grace Under Pressure after dark, and just invite like a few of these people who have been like kind of reluctant, or they're like, I don't know, there's so many other people, and like do an after dark version where we just get everybody in their cups and interview them. Maybe with like censored bars over their eyes for just a little bit of plausible deniability. So
we could do the Snapchat filters with like the dog face thing, you know?
Dog faces?
Yeah, it's a Snapchat.
Come now,
filter.
Joel.
You know.
Unicorns.
Unicorns. There we go. That's better.
Right.
So, Joel, maybe you want to talk about this one.
Yeah, that fabric is really beautiful. It looks like Sartor silk. I'm gonna guess on that one, and I got nothing. Y'all do
You're
it.
out. Okay,
You know,
well, this is
just
our
keep going.
this is our band. Our band's name is Royal Court, and this is our first album cover. The band has not broken up. We're still together. However, we just haven't done any recent work. But this is one of my favorite photos. Like, I'm looking at someone like, you've got to be kidding. Would you please stop talking so long? We have a schedule. I'm known to keep things down to the minute in court. Like, I time things out. AOAs get so much time. Gupta songs at this much. Peerages get 12 minutes. That's it. And I don't know what he's thinking. He's probably thinking that the rum in his cup is pretty good. He's a little starry-eyed there. And then this is Mistress Gara, and she's the enforcer. And when I travel around, she's my sinister companion. And then we've got Cardinal Sin in the background there. But yeah, that's our band. This is the first time, I believe, that I got to, on my own merits, be near the front of the processional line in a crown tournament. And it's because I was the kingdom champion and lion on tier. That that banner is made by Baroness Anna de la Serra of Dragon's Mist, and it's fantastic. It's checky, it's beautiful, and my pals had kicked in the funds for Ugo to create that lion head, Master Ugo, and it's a fantastic banner, and that was for my.
Knowing him, it was made out of a human skull.
Actually, he did not do that for me. It's sturdier than a human skull because he knew that I wanted to use it when I ride the horses.
Okay.
And it's awfully pretty. We're trying to figure out how to put a whistle in it.
Oh.
So it whistles as the other ones would, because it's scary when you come up on horseback and they're whistling, and it scares the other people there. This is my horse Cookie, the Wonder Horse. Several years ago, people were getting into creating magic cards for people in on tier, and I don't know how to play magic, and I know very little about this, except that trample is a good thing. All other human creatures gain trample. It says, of all the horse lords, one stands tall, and whose skill is matched only by few others. So I felt pretty cool getting my own card.
I never had a magic card, and I think it's because they couldn't have contained me on one card.
That's probably it, actually.
Yeah. You think?
I think so. So these are both taken in Dragon's Lair at different times. So I think that's kind of funny. But my big thing is putting on pageantry, so that when people who come, the one on the left is a June Fair, and June Fair is this ginormous, like 10,000 people demo. And when people come, I want them to take pictures and go back to work the next week and be like, look at this cool stuff I saw. And so putting on a good show for the populace is really important to me. And I try to encourage other people to do the same. Make sure that they have barding on their horse. It's not hard. Walk through the garage on your way to, get in the truck to drive to the event and grab a rug off the floor. Use that.
Miranda, how do you get bards to agree to hang off of the horses, though?
I have a picture of that, though I did not include it. When Nita, our bard, who was Kingdom Arts and Sciences champion, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she actually, there is a picture of her on the horse being all bardy, funny, gestury. But and this is again a last chance in Dragon's Lair, and I had just completed a perfect run on my trusty companion there. And I'm like, booyah. And you can actually see me saying that, booyah. But one of my favorites, I'm like, if I were to die, I would want that picture to be part of my memorial service.
Aw. Well, now that you've said it, we all know.
Make it so, number one.
Okay.
Like I said about pageantry, you know, I did not win this Prix, but I won what I wanted to win, and that was putting on an excellent show during the processional.
So franchise or yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it was just a personal thing for me. I was winning because all of my buddies here showed up to support me in my colors with my banners, and it was amazing. The biggest processional there. So we've got Ludviga hiding behind my banner here. She's not trying to hide, but she ended up hiding. I had barons and baronesses from several different branches with me. It was
And there's Nita out front on her horse.
Oh yeah, that's the one that I was. We talked about Nita being on her horsey, and she actually did research on this and constructed the basket much like they would have back in the medieval times. And she eventually made, I believe it was a paper mache head, correct? Instead
Yeah.
of the.
And she at Ontario West War had a box of wine in it, and it dispensed it out of its hindquarters, which is why she calls it Franzia.
That's right. I'd forgotten
She was
that
dispensing Chardonnay.
So she is your apprentice, yes?
She's my apprentice. I try to just mostly keep her from, I don't know. I don't try to keep her from doing anything now. She's in China, but she's amazing. She's an astounding human. And the fact that you guys are so close is really, really special to me. You know, and that's the thing about On Tier also, is that even though we're really big, we are also a family, and lots of people share connections across. We don't have like the way a lot of other places have really big, strong households. It's slightly less the case here because we have so many baronies. So we have a lot of branches that have really tight relationships. And so people will go and play with a lot of other branches other than the ones they live in. So it's cool, and it's not actually all that typical, which is, it's part of what makes On Tier special.
Joel, are you part of a household?
So I am. I'm part of St. Jude in Artemisia, and yeah, and they keep me in check. So, but most of the kingdoms I played in have been more of like regional based camping, where you camp with your shire or your barony or something along that line, more than you know, like a household, where kind of like how it is on the east side of the Mississippi.
Now, Dagmar, do you have a household?
Do I have a household?
Yes.
Oh no, we're parasites.
Oh,
So
okay.
we just find people who are willing to help us put up our tent. And we go and we hang out with them, and we allow people to use our names to reserve space on the tourney field, because it's you'll get priority if you are a royal peer.
Yes.
And
Ludviga's name.
yeah, so we allow that, and then we just, you know, whoever's willing to help us set up and tear down, and we'll help them too, of course, but we will literally grace them with our presence. It's a better deal probably for us than them, but I am fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to give me coffee. So that's really, unfortunately, I was kind of in a loose household. My wonderful apprentice, who is now a Laurel, Heloisa, and I would camp together, but she has now moved to Mesa, Arizona. So I might have to move to Arizona.
Or visit.
Oh.
Or visit. Well, we're not necessarily in a household. We have a bunch of gals that we call ourselves the Shield Maidens, and it's just a really supportive group of gals and all over the kingdom. And we do fun things like, you know, an ornament exchange at Christmas or that kind of thing, or secret gift exchange. But it's really these women will show up and help out whenever you need it. So the reason why I talk about households though is I think it should be okay to, households used to be like a dirty word, like don't have a household, don't become a member of a household. But I think it's really important that people have a place that they feel safe and a home base to touch base with, and a group of people to support one another. And I encourage everyone to look for that group of people, and even if it's not uh, a, an actual household or a branch, create your own culture, your own entity, and be welcoming. Be the people who welcome those others in, like the sad Duchess who has nowhere to camp.
I mean, we usually find a space because somebody can find an extra 20 feet. But the other thing too is, so Heloisa and I, before she left, had been talking about starting a cult, because there's a lot of evidence in her period of, you would have cults that were not the way we think of them now. They would be sects that, were devoted to a certain type of thing or relic or whatever.
And we culture does come from cult.
That's right. So. And we thought it would be really fun to play with that in a sort of non-Christian, non-denominational way. And so we had played with the idea of the cult of Saint Lactatia, but and making it a safe space, literally, for people who maybe felt that they were not welcome, or if they had been made to feel that their gender or their gender expression or their sexuality or their any sort of identity issue had been a problem for them somewhere else, that they would always feel safe with us.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, and I think what you said about your encampment or your household being a safe place to be is so important, because of course the last few years in the SCA we've seen a lot of challenges where these challenges, I mean, let me say that differently, they've been made more visible, where people haven't felt safe and haven't felt safe telling us that they're not safe either, which just is so heartbreaking to know that, that has been ongoing. And for me, it really started with the inspirational equality, the emergence of that issue. And I do remember that you, at one of your crowns, did have people approach the thrones to attempt to enter the lists and had to deny them.
That was a really difficult thing to do, because Tiernan and I are both very accepting of whatever walk of life that you are choosing. And it was very difficult to know that we would not be supported by the board of directors, and our reign would probably be in jeopardy. It was really hard, and it was.
And for the people listening, this is before inspirational equality had passed at the society level or any allowance was made. Of course, people of the same sex were not allowed to be a reigning pair or even enter the lists together. And then on Tier, we had a lot of activism to try and push that and to try and directly confront it. And so Tiernan and Miranda, one of their reigns, they chose to do it it was theater, but it was also very serious. To attempt to enter the lists knowing they would be denied entrance.
So it was Master Eduardo.
Yeah.
And he was fighting for his consort husband at the time, and Mistress Ariel and her partner, and several others came up. And we were having this fantastic Eric party and court. It was like, instead of doing the processional in the hot right before the tournament, the crown tournament, we decided to do a nighttime one the night before, and people came up and introduced themselves, their consort, and their persona. And Tiernan really wanted people to have fabulous banners and a persona story. And so we were trying to, help. It was kind of like a documentary on different personas. And it turned out really well. We had branches that had food tables set up for the populace, and then also for the contenders who were, snaking around behind us, not snaking in a bad way, but just, going around behind us. And and it was fantastic. And then Eduardo and his group came up, and it was just like we wanted so badly to say yes, but we couldn't. And Eduardo and I are fine. We've become friends over the years, and his daughter, she calls me her horse mom. So I take her horseback riding.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they did the same in our last reign. They, you know, they came and processed in court, and I have to tell you, like, I couldn't even say the words to deny them entrance into our court. Thorin had to take over because I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. And it was just incredibly difficult. And, you know, you were talking earlier about what our responsibilities are as royal peers. And it's something I take very seriously, is that the privilege that comes with the responsibility to make sure that the SCA is inclusive and that we aren't losing sight of our core values of inclusion when we focus so much on what's period or what's not, or all of those conversations can mask what's really happening. You know, so
I got kind of just a question on that, because I haven't heard this before. You said that the bod wouldn't support you. Were you talking like invalidating a reign, or what?
the crown.
Or okay, I didn't know what the like repercussions would have been.
If a crown goes against, you know, the governing documents of the society, you know, there should be consequences for that. But we knew that we could do more good as the crown than not. So, and it really needed to be out there. I mean, they needed to make these presentations so that people became aware. And I believe we were wearing armbands, to get the word out as well. And later on, I was a big proponent and advocate for Finn when he stepped up as Baron, our first Baron in Ontir, on same-sex couple.
Yeah.
So for Dragon's Nest.
Yep.
I was glad to be able to be on the side of right for that one. So the horsey stuff. These are all me. I'm on my own horse in the first two here, but I'm dressed up in the middle picture as Sir Gernon at the Ampri. It's the right time period, the 14th century. And so I disguised my horse, and I wore Sir Gernon's armor, and his wife was my consort and inspiration for the day, and used his banner and all that. And the judges were quite, you know, convinced that I was Sir Gernon. And until Gernon started talking next to the dais where the judges were at, and then they were like, Charles was like, wait a second, something's amiss here. But it was lots of fun. And again, people that live far away from me still, you know, supporting me and my ideas and my craziness. This is, well, my horses couldn't cross the border into Oregon one year because one of them had a lump on its neck, but it had always been there, kind of a thing. But I went to Hawktide down in the summits, and Sir William Brannan lent me his horse, Orion, to ride during the day. And I forgot my banner because I had left my trailer elsewhere, and I forgot to grab my banner. So those are actually, any guesses? Any guesses what those are?
On which?
On the black horsey.
It's really tiny on my screen because I have so many things open.
Well, that's actually a pair of Tiernan's knickers, his underwear. And I got extra points from the princess Vesta at the time. She's like, are those what I think they are? And I'm like, yes, Your Highness, they are Tiernan's underwear, period. Underwear.
Whatever inspires you, Miranda, that's fine.
And she gave me extra points. So I actually won part of the competition because of that. You see horseback archery. That's a thing. That's the first time I had ever done horseback archery. And that was the finals of a Kingdom Championship there. And I'm wearing Reagan Leaf's little cap to keep my hair out of my eyes, and borrowed a little kid's bow. I did not win that day. Here I am as champion. Onto your West War in front of our own encampment. And that's Hondo. And I got to escort Kiva as the queen. She was the queen. I got to escort her, and she got to, like cheer on the troops and get them all riled up from horseback. So that was lots of fun. And then this is at the Ampri again on Hondo. I like to dress up in different costumes for the Ampri, not the same old thing every year. All right, Joel.
I have so many questions.
Commentary on this one, Joel.
Yeah, what's going on?
Tell us the story.
That carpet was actually made asbestos-free in 1972, and it was then rolled out. But you can tell it's the asbestos-free model by the alternating pattern that you have going on there. What's going on right here is that fine gentleman actually busted his codpiece, and you were refilling the margarita maker that was located inside of it.
Ooh, that's mighty kind of me.
I don't think that's what's happening. And Shaxi is giving us her guess about, Shaxi's in the chat telling us that this also, it's not a guess, she says. This also involves period underwear.
It does. So we have
I was close though, right?
No.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean carpet. If you want to think of underwear as carpet covering, maybe. I got nothing.
We have Master of Defense, one of the premiers, I believe, Talon, here, and he is so proud of all the hand stitching that he did on his garments, and especially his period underwear, that he was showing that to me so that I could be awed by his great skill. And this is
said odd with odd AWED, not ODD. Yes. Okay.
Sure. This is one of the jobs of a royal peer, is to show interest in things that may not be
in your wheelhouse,
appropriate, or in my wheelhouse. Yes, and give attention to those things. So I could speak to it later, and now I am speaking to it. He had lovely stitches on his period underwear. So.
And I will say also, Joel, that it's unlikely that there's asbestos in that carpet, because this is probably Washington or Oregon, where the environmental regulations are pretty strict.
Yep, that's in Adiantum, the barony of Adiantum in Oregon.
Just saying.
I will make a note for next time.
Yeah. And this is my latest endeavor. I was made a pelican in 2004, and then in 2019, I finally took on a protege, a student. I had always kind of thought, it's weird. Do I have to teach someone service? And you kind of do, or give them opportunities to serve. Find avenues for them to explore and to show their skill and develop their skills. And this is, you'll like this name, this is Dagmar, Thorfinn's daughter, who is married to Sir Rainer. And she moved up from Caid. And I had been thinking on the way down to Ontario Westport that year, I need to spend more time with this girl. 30s, in her 30s, so she's not really a girl, but I'm 52, so like I need to spend more time with her. She doesn't have her parents around. She doesn't have a lot of buddies up here. She just had a baby.
I think she's listening to the interview, by the way.
And I'm like, I felt drawn to be her auntie, not a mama or a grandma, but an auntie, And when I got to Ontario Westport, she kept coming by with the baby, with baby Clark, and she acted kind of nervous, and she kept coming by. And of course, I was working on an Ontario Westport cloak that we take turns making every other year, and I've made like the last 6 of them. I was, of course, working on the cloak at the event, and she came by and asked if I would take her on and be her peer as a pelican. And I just thought, wow, how fantastic that our stars aligned and we were both thinking the same thing. And then I was like, told my husband, he knew, somebody else knew about it. And I'm like, maybe you guys should have given me a heads up, because I could have probably said no, because that was kind of my MO throughout the years, is telling people no when it came to that. I had many projects, people that I helped along the way, but I hadn't made anything like formal. I had a protege, FAUX, and that was Mistress Guerra Strongguard. She's my foe. So
That's great. Well, I've also made a lot of Ontario West war cloaks, so we can be sisters in that regard, and which makes sense because it was at my instigation that we started doing that. And then I did a few of them, and then I stopped doing them. And so the fact that other people did it and I didn't have to be involved anymore, that is also one of my superpowers, is walking away from things that I stirred the pot to start. Being like, nope, not mine anymore. So I can show genuine appreciation to people who make those cloaks. It is not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of work to do it well. And I really appreciate that a lot.
oh, well, I was fortunate to be in conversation with Duchess Inga when she was reigning in Ontario, and she had wanted to do the cloak on her own. And just as queen,
It's a lot.
that's a lot to take on. And so it was like a couple weeks before, and I finally said, just I'll do it. I'd never done stuff like that before. Um, but I mean, I'd done the applique bags that we would send to Penzic or Estrella,
Yeah.
but this cloak, and she had an idea. So she sent me the idea and I made it. And then in true fashion to Miranda, there were several of us, like 6 of us, sitting around sewing on it the last few seconds.
Yeah.
The latest I was with a cloak was I was putting the last stitch in it as they were calling up the recipient in court.
I've done that.
So for those of us not from Ontario or the West, what is the Ontario West cloak for?
Well, it started when it was a long time ago, and there was some bad blood between the kingdoms from the Ontario West War, or West Ontario War, depending on what side of the Crispix you're from. And I actually was in the process of moving to Ontario from the West for one of those wars. And there had been just some really like shitty kind of accusations of people not fighting chivalrically and all of this garbage. And the reality was people get along better than they don't get along in almost every one of these circumstances. So I actually, the first one I worked on was to be gifted from the West to Ontario, because that was the original. I was like, hey, why don't we have this war cloak? And you decide each year someone from the opposite army who isn't the royalty, who should be given a war cloak for their great leadership or chivalry, or just by distinguishing themselves from the other kingdom's army. And so the first one was given to Hathawolf by Jade was reigning, but Torfin was the crown prince. And so he was the one at the war, and he gifted that to Hathawolf. And then it kind of went on from there. And it is a cool thing to encourage to look at your opponents and see the best of them, is a really lovely gesture. So
it's
it was
really
great.
moving to see all the past recipients wearing their cloaks,
Yeah.
who are in attendance, coming up in court and being part of this recognition. It's and they tell why the person's being recognized. And
It's very cool.
Arnsbjorn has gotten one, Tiernan has gotten one, and Kjartan's gotten two. And Uncle Rod, Sir Rodrigo of Stromgard, all of us from Stromgard, he also was a recipient of one. So
it's a really cool tradition, and traditions start often because something unpleasant has happened and you have to respond to it with grace. And so that's, and in this situation, the West royalty saw fit to say, yes, this is a good idea, and this is a good way to try and sort of smooth over some of these hard feelings. So it's cool. It's a cool thing. And it usually is a bunch of people sitting around making it together at the last minute. That's the other cool thing.
Like any good project, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think the last one I did, I actually finished a week early, and I was like, oh.
What was wrong with it?
I don't know. It
Right?
was pretty fantastic looking.
Did you
It
forget
just
to
came
put
together
something on
really
it, or-
easily. What's that, Joel?
Nothing. I was just making a joke.
Yeah,
Miranda, we are actually running really late because we are having such a great conversation. And I'm only bringing that up because you've actually answered so many of our questions that we would normally ask. You've just kind of talked about those things naturally, which is really fantastic.
But
And
I want one. I want to weasel in here for one question.
do it. One that's
So
gonna
you
stump
talked earlier actually about creating awards in the SCA and DMO. If there was one award that you could create that doesn't exist currently, what would it be, and what would it be for?
Well, I think we've done all the awards that we wanted to. We did the Lion's Strength, which is for 20 years of consistent service. We did the Leo Minor, which is like a teenager service award. The Righteous Wrath, which is a period encampment. Wrath, R-A-T-H, Irish cut. The Good Booth for merchants to have a period-esque presence at events. The Ore and Argent is the someone who works behind the scenes to solve a problem or keep things going during a rain. So that's awarded once per rain. And the wordsmith we talked about, Lion's Pride, is for the children, the minor age children of the crown who have served during their parents' reign. And we formalized the Prince and Princess Royale title that had been used. I think the biggest one, oh, I forgot, the Inspirational Consort. That's the one to be given at a principality coronet or a crown event. Someone who has been at the side of the field cheering on their fighter, or out on the equestrian field, someone who's being the groom, or taking part in all the other activities that are happening, the martial activities, being that fantastic consort. I think that's really important, so that we recognize those people who are giving of their time so that someone else can aspire to their goals.
in one of our earliest interviews, we talked about big ass heralds because that was from never mind the story, but we decided that it would be the Vox Lianus. So, and somebody's son like quickly designed some like a badge for it and everything. So that could be one in Ontier that it's for like a pushy herald who kind of shoves their way in between the thrones and, maybe is a great herald, but doesn't have great personal space. So
are you saying that about me?
No, it was specifically a statement. When I was in my first reign, Countess Elizabeth, Countess E, said something in a Ladies of the Rose, that was how we were known at the time, meeting about, blah, blah, blah. And then, some big ass herald comes shoving their way in there. And I said, there are ass heralds, and broke her in the meeting. I broke her in pieces. And so we were talking about that story, and I think it might have been a Shaxi who suggested the Vox Lianus would be the.
She's a witty one.
Yeah. So, which I think needs to happen.
I do want to set the record straight. I don't always have to be the person who talks. I would like other people to step up and represent like during Pelican Council, during whatever, being the herald. I just do it because people can hear me at the back. I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I want things to go smoothly for the crown, but I would be really happy to not have to be that person, because I'm always afraid that they're like, oh, there's Miranda again. Have to be front and center. No,
Or at least center.
I've
center.
tried heralding before, and I know this is gonna be shocking to people I watch, but I get up there and like, and then I screw it up and I say something wrong, and so I found out I'm best just saying it out in the back of the court as a heckler, if I even go to court, because I'm kind of bad about that.
Arnsbjorn came and got me once when Cedric and Elizabeth were reigning, and their court coordinator was like 19, I don't know, it was Sir Rolf and Dame Ashley's daughter, Bridget, Her Excellency Bridget. And the heralds were kind of running her over. And I think it was Arnsbjorn came and got me from the equestrian area and said, you have to help. Okay, I'll come up and be bossy and set things straight. That's what teachers do. That's what I do mundanely. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I picked the peerage ceremonies because I wanted them to go smoothly. And then like a week later, Duke Owain called me and said, would you be our herald? I realize that you probably have other heralding responsibilities, but we'd really like you to be our court herald for our reign. And that was the first time I'd done any heralding.
That's funny. Yeah, but you have the experience, the lived experience. And also, you know, when you've reigned, you kind of know what works and what doesn't. It's a really nice perspective to have. And we have a lot of royal peers who herald in Ontir. It's really common here. I don't know if that's true in other kingdoms. I haven't thought to ask our interviewees, but it's very common here that we have this like really wonderful clutch of royal peers who do a lot of heraldry. So,
and it's handy to have that wealth of knowledge between the crown, the king and queen, and the herald, the court coordinator, so that if something happens, we're like, put your heads together, come up with something really quickly. Okay, this is what we're doing.
right, you can just flex with it.
Yeah.
So
really, yeah,
Miranda, you've done a lot of things. You're a pelican, you're a royal peer, you've been a kingdom champion, all these things. So what keeps you going in the SCA? What inspires you? Like what are your aspirations in the SCA at this point?
To lift other people up, to help them on their pathways. You've spoken of social capital before. I have some of that, and to make sure that people are feeling that Ontir and the SCA is a welcoming place and a place that they can feel safe.
Yeah. And that sometimes means looking at ourselves and saying, what have I done to not do that? Mm-hmm. That's so hard, but it's super important to have the humility to kind of go, oh, you know what? I probably have some restoration or restorative justice I need to do there to go and talk to somebody. And that's really tough to know that intentions are not what matters. It's like, no, what we actually did is what matters. So that can be a big pill to swallow sometimes.
There's still probably 2 bridges I need to rebuild. And so working up to that.
I'll let you know if there's more, don't worry. You know what? It's actually funny. So I have to say, I'm going to call out a really cool thing about you. And that is Miranda has helped me because some of my close friends know that I'm leaving my cushy job with the state of Washington to go become a teacher, a school teacher, especially in special ed. And Miranda was like a huge help for me in making that decision. But I was thinking about how many people who run courts and who are really involved in service in the SCA are school teachers in Washington and Oregon and in Ontario in general, I'm sure. And it's really common here. We have a lot of school teachers involved, and in particular, people with special ed expertise, which
Yes,
probably
especially.
helps with a lot of, since a lot of us have neurological differences, that's probably a big help too. But how valuable that skill set is. And so I am going to make a nod to your skill set in that area, since you did mention that you're a teacher. Thank you. Thank you for doing that as your career. And Tiernan too, you guys are both school teachers, which is amazing.
He teaches across. I'm actually in my classroom right now, where I had a lovely conversation with Dagmar this fall. I think it was this fall.
Yep.
Uh, about teaching and special needs students. And Tiernan works across the hallway. He teaches middle school history, and I'm the middle or 8th grade science teacher.
Yep.
Go science! That's
Go
why
science.
I was wearing my mask at the beginning.
Yeah.
Science is
I
good,
pay
y'all.
attention. And Dagmar's like, she gave this speech about wear your mask, do your part.
Yeah.
Well, I was wearing it.
There you go.
All right. Hey, Joel, I'm sorry we left you out, but
No,
it's all about the horsey. Joel, if you ever come to On Tier, you can come pet the horsey's nose and make peace.
I don't know. They've tried that before at Gulf Wars, and like they're not my thing.
They're not your
I get it, Joel.
I don't hate them. I don't hate horse people. It's nothing like that. It's just I am really uncomfortable around horses.
And they far outweigh people, so they can do a lot of damage. In fact, the first championship I won, I almost had to be hypnotized to get on the horse because I had fallen off my horse and had a severe head trauma, and I was afraid. I was afraid to get on, and it was Ace, this horse that I had ridden before and always did well on. But
you could argue that that's not a head trauma. That was your body telling you that it wasn't a good idea, and that it was the opposite of trauma, and that you were traumatizing yourself by doing it. But I have to say, in my second reign, I might have been crown princess, but Driffa worked with me and got me qualified as an entry level, whatever, for whatever it is, on one of her very sweet horses. And I never thought I would lead a horse on my own and get it to go up over a thing and do all the stuff. And I did it. And then I broke myself. My hips went out and I couldn't do it again. But it was very, very cool because I didn't think I could do it. I was also very intimidated by them. So not a lot of horses on military bases.
No,
ironically,
not anymore. But that's one thing.
Fort Carson still has them, actually.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Fourth ID is one of the last units that still has an active cavalry company that for DNC drill ceremony type stuff. Fun fact: there's a thing you now know. I contributed.
Yay!
Joel, do you have a last question for?
Yeah. So the the pandemic and the plague and ongoing global bastard, whatever you want to call it, has fundamentally changed kind of how the SCA has been. What do you see the SCA being like on the other side of the vaccine rainbow? Do you see the online content being as important still, or are we going to go back to how it always was? What do you see it being like once we can kind of go back to normality a bit?
I think we're going to see a lot more, a varied set of members in the future. And it's okay. I mean, people used to laugh and make fun of people who could only participate via email or a Yahoo group back in the days. And but now I think it's like, why not? Why not have it so that people can access the joys that we have in over the internet instead? And maybe they live far away. Maybe they have a disability that they can't get to events and set up a tent and do all that. But I think it's fantastic what you are all doing, because it keeps the SCA alive and in the minds of our members and potential new members. And there's so much out there right now. And I saw the schedule of all the different online forums and interviews that are going on. And it's so important to keep that alive right now. I'm afraid that we're going to lose a lot of people because they're going to realize that it does cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if we can keep them coming around and online and active that way, then we can deal with that. But yeah, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time, and it's a lot easier to just sit back and kick your feet up in front of the television and watch A Knight's Tale, to get your
Knight Rider, I think you mean to say.
oh I was yeah I was thought Chaucer and
Not the TV show,
Heath
the
Ledger.
movie.
Oh, well, the talking car kid.
No, the Ed Harris movie.
It-
Knight Riders. Where they're jousting on motorcycles. Oh my
Oh,
God.
that one.
What?
How do you not know
Yes.
this? This is like
I have a funny story real quick, not about Knight Riders, but about Role Models. The movie with, they were LARPing.
amazing, amazing movie.
People would say to Duke Sven, "So is that what you do?" And he'd be like, "Totally."
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Stop it. Stop saying that.
Yo, you're talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Barbarella on a
I'm
motorcycle.
adding that to my watch list right now. Sorry.
Knight
All right,
Riders
so
is amazing.
we have gone way past our time. I'm
We
sure.
have.
Oh my
This has
God.
been amazing. So Miranda, we always end these by asking some questions so that we can put together a virtual gift basket for you. And we would have asked in advance, like my people would have said, hey, what is Miranda like? And then we would have put together a basket for you. So I do need to ask, are you a white or red wine drinker?
No wine drinker.
No wine. Okay.
No alcohol, actually.
No alcohol. Okay, we can work with that.
At all.
I'll be your stun liver.
Way
Okay.
cheaper, way cheaper.
So
Milk
I'm
or dark?
healthy as it is, and I get
Okay.
in a lot of trouble as it is. And so adding alcohol to that is a bad idea.
Fair. How about milk or dark chocolate?
Dark.
Dark
all the way,
chocolate.
with
Okay, and
salt.
puppies or kittens?
Puppies.
Puppies. Okay, I mean, I knew that. So we made you a beautiful gift basket,
Oh.
and we are gifting it to you. And as you've probably heard me say before, this basket has no handles because handles are from the devil. And when you put handles on a basket, you cannot pack it in your car to get home. So this basket has no handles, but it's, maybe being an on-tier, it's one of those backpack baskets.
Yeah.
The really
Those
swank
are so cool.
ones,
Those are
which
cool.
in and of itself is a really nice
I
gift.
could
So
put puppies in it and hang it off the sides of
well,
my
so let's
saddle.
talk about that. So no wine, though. I think what we might do is find out what, if you have a head of retinue at the time, what they're drinking, and we'll put something for them in there because I know that's really important to you.
Yes.
Make sure that
It
they're
could be from the
being
Coke.
That's right. And then dark chocolate, we will find some really groovy dark chocolate that you can't get in your local, like Fred Meyer or Whole Foods, something really interesting, but not homemade because you don't know where it's been. So, and then we will give you a pile of puppies to roll around in that you can take home if you want, but you are not required to. That's the really important thing. And then the other thing that, what's that?
There's more.
There's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is a virtual gift basket. We can put anything we want in it. I'm packing your basket inside of a brand new horse trailer.
Oh,
Beautiful.
Wow.
All the bells and whistles you could possibly imagine on a horse trailer. I don't know what those are, so I'm just going to make up a few. There's a horse. There's a horse massager in it.
Oh.
There's like a heated floor for hoof freeze. There's a hammock for horses who don't feel like standing up because that's a horse thing, right? Totally. And like a horse vending machine where they can like punch in the numbers and letters of their favorite treats.
And get like chewing tobacco or
whatever horses like. I
or-
mean,
they like that kind of stuff.
apple pies from McDonald's, I would imagine, would be big with horses.
What about apple pie moonshine?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whatever a horse wants. Yeah.
Yeah,
a horse snake.
It can go through the automatic waterers in.
Perfect. And when you have a horse named Cookie, you got to imagine they're up for just about anything.
Yeah. She's fierce. Well, she was. She's no longer.
I'm sorry. So there you go. That's what we would give you that's your basket, is like a brand new horse trailer, so which we can't actually give you, but it's
Well, thank you. Well, I am going to work with Nita to see if we can get Joel a horse costume, much like she created for herself,
There you go.
Franzia. So that will be my gift to you for having done all this service throughout the last 18 weeks or whatever it's been. Thank you very much.
You get your
Keeping
own horse,
society
Joel.
alive. And Duchess Dagmar, what can I give to you? A trip with me to China.
Oh, to go
see our
see
Nita.
Nita? Yes. Okay. I accept. So yeah.
It might have to
So-
be virtual.
Yeah. We'll have to go visit Nita, who's teaching in China, another teacher. So we miss her terribly in Ontario. So
All righty. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for doing this.
thank you.
I really appreciate that you guys are keeping our society alive.
Thank you for giving us so much of your time. So
I was joking around, but you know, this was so much fun. This was a great time. And definitely sets the record for the longest one. We try to keep these to an hour normally. I think we just came shy of 2, and didn't even realize how long it was until the end here. So thank you so much for joining us, your Graves. I really did enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing everyone again. For everybody watching at home, join us next week. We'll be joined by Gwen from North Shield, and the usual things: renew your membership, wear your mask, believe in silence, be kind to each other. We love everybody. We'll see you soon, and thank you so much for joining us.
thanks, Miranda. Thanks, Joel.
Bye.
Thanks, Ashaxi.